Welcome to a brand new podcast. Ian McLean is a writer and the author of TJ's War. David Blair is an actor and the narrator of the audiobook TJ's War. David and Ian have been listening to their readers and listeners and have decided to turn TJ's War into a movie. And since the story covers the entirety of World War II, the movie will cost at least $50 million. Will David and Ian succeed in their quest? Follow them in this podcast series. We're going to make a $50 million movie.
Did I ever tell you, David, how I met Quinn?
No.
Well, it's down to my father-in-law, Mike. I always smile when I say father-in-law. He's 5 years older than I am. But anyway, we're all out together in going for a meal in a restaurant of a hotel. What's the hotel called, Quinn?
J.D. Young Hotel.
J.D. Young Hotel in
Harleston.
Harleston, that's right. And it's a busy place.
Yeah.
Lots of people because the lockdown was over by this point. And we're having a couple of drinks before we go through to the restaurant. Lots of people around. And there's this guy with a camera. And he's sort of going around the room, trying to get himself in the position where he can take pictures. And we're looking at him wondering what's going on. And Mike being Mike, he eventually decides he needs to find out. So he went up to him because Mike will talk to anybody. And he's a real character. He's great. Lots of fun. And he goes off and he comes back and he says, nice. He's taking pictures for a website. JD Young got a website and he's taking pictures for them. And I, by this point, just published the book and I created a website for it. But websites are not my thing. And I suddenly went, I've been looking for you. So I went off and of course this was Quinn doing all those photographs. And this was in the middle of the evening. And I was really impressed with and I'm still impressed with what you're describing now. Your enterprise the whole time. You don't just sit by a desk and work on your computer. You get out there. And I thought, this is exactly what I need. And I got a hold of Quinn and we had a chat. And I gave you some references in terms of the book and so on. And got your telephone number and went off. And then we started talking and recruited. And you've just been there ever since then. It's just been great.
You also sent me the audiobook, and I then was the most ill I've ever been for quite some time.
Because of listening to it?
No. That got me through the illness. Genuinely, I was absolutely abysmally ill. I get quite awful migraines, and I was just basically laying in bed for a week, just completely, unable to move, open my eyes or anything like that. And I listened to that audiobook from cover to cover. I didn't stop. So basically, Ian then emailed me, I'd say about a week later, like, how are you getting on? And I'm like, I'm done. I've listened to the whole thing. I think it's 24 hours, isn't it? I did a 24-hour audiobook, nigh on cover to cover. The only breaks were to sleep. And then, obviously, absolutely obsessed with it, and basically then listened to it again. And then obviously we were doing kind of little samples and bits and pieces, and in doing that process I was like listening to it again, but in like hour-long chunks, so that I can find samples. Then you sent me an actual copy of the book and I read that cover to cover. And it is, as you say, I think I've read it probably more times than I'd like to admit, but obviously doing what I do and obviously being very much the front of the business, obviously, but without having my face. The content has to be correct. It has to be appropriate. Obviously, it's quite important to me, and this is obviously with any business that I kind of represent, know what it is that you're selling, but know it well enough that if someone says, oh, that bit that does this, or, oh, this thing that we did here, you've got to know it. You can't just kind of, or you've got to at least have some vague reference to it so that you can then pick up the book or pick up the product and then kind of make immediate reference to it, and you can kind of fill in any gap, I guess, time-related memory loss.
Well, it's impressive. He probably knows it better than you, Ian.
For the first maybe 3 or 4 weeks, I thought that I foolishly thought that I knew the book better than Quinn. And so I would be directing Quinn in terms of what I felt was important. But it very quickly got to the point that Quinn would be directing how we should do things and what areas we should be focusing on in terms of the book and in terms of the subject matter that should go along with the book. And it's it's been to be able to rest on Quinn, to get that kind of dialogue going, and as I say, every team should have a Quinn. We've been producing content for social media for 2 years.
Is it really?
I was talking to a guy yesterday who's a massive podcast in America, and he said that, how long have we been going with this podcast? I said, well, episode 14 goes out on Thursday. And he said, well, do you know that more than 90% of all podcasts give up after episode 3? Because people don't really appreciate just how much effort goes into producing an episode.
And it's a slow burn.
We've been producing, and it's a very slow burn, but it's far better to have that. We've got strength and depth here. But the thing is that it's been that rapport that's between Quinn and I. It's kept us going for the first 18 months in terms of the social media content. And then as we get the podcast going, it's this rapport that's been going on that's ensured that we've got content, and it's good content, and it's building and building and building. I'm just very grateful to you, Quinn, and to you, David, for being there and being part of this.
Well,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to be here as well. I mean, I see it as, obviously, and you said it before, and I feel like it's quite an important kind of thing to reiterate to what you've said in our previous conversations. So obviously not necessarily been put on a podcast episode, but it's building an island, isn't it? You're basically, even if at this stage we've only got, X number of people consuming the content, you build that island. There are more ports for people to basically dock. There's more opportunities for people to, and it's a whole SEO thing. It's not to go too much into kind of how the internet works, but obviously you've got more links that can have more people get channeled towards your island. And at the start, you learn very much about kind of what people actually want with regards to content on this. We started by putting, review content out where we'd put, what people's opinions were of the book. And we were finding that actually no one was really interested in that. They were more interested in hearing samples. They're more interested in seeing war footage. They were more interested in kind of the actual historical element of it rather than the actual how people have taken the book. And then you develop that more and more. But then we started finding that Ian was going to, I believe you're in Sicily, if I remember correctly, and you recorded a bit because there was...
Catalonia, not Sicily.
I stand corrected. And you recorded a kind of a short little TikTok video just talking about how the history of where you were, alongside then how that kind of is being repeated, and just a general kind of historical, what was it, like a minute and a half, I guess, alongside, how it also combines into the book, and people loved it. And it was the first really popular video that we did compared to everything else. And we started realizing that people were more interested in the actual content of the book, in the sense of the stories, the anecdotes, those kind of bits and pieces. And then we tried that kind of I think we tried about 3 or 4 episodes where it was just basically Ian was talking. I'd give him a prompt and he would just talk about it, and they did really well. And it was really a natural progression to think, actually, if you can get the podcast in front of the right people, it would very much be consumed, because people will find it interesting. There's not just one element of it. It's not just a $50 million movie. It's also what went into making the book, writing it, getting it published, then see, okay, who do we now need to talk to? Who's interested? And then there's a whole kind of thing that incorporates around it that really makes the podcast quite special, as opposed to those millions of podcasts where someone goes on to just talk about that one product, and it's very much from one direction. There are a lot of different directions we can talk about, which then appeals to a hell of a lot of people, because you're not just saying, okay, it's a book. No, there's more to it. It's a story. It's someone finding out their parents, their past. So there's a whole kind of heritage element of it that people are interested in, ancestry, all of that kind of stuff is in it. So there's always something for someone to kind of grasp onto and find as the most interesting part of it. And it all comes together to make, the podcast.
Yeah. And the breadth of people in the team now as well. All these individual stories, it is what you're saying times all those people, as well as the original content of the book.
Absolutely
obviously.
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the great thing about the podcast episodes and the other videos that we've done, they have no shelf life, or they have an eternal shelf life, rather. So people can come back to them whenever they want. I mean, I came across a woman, I overheard a conversation. I didn't get involved in it, but I overheard a conversation where this woman was saying that what she likes to do is get onto one of these TV channels where she can see the very first episodes of EastEnders. I thought, you're the one. I've often wondered, why do they broadcast these early Coronation Street and so on, and early EastEnders? I know where this woman is now. I know where she works.
It's just saying it's ageless, but obviously I also think it's kind of, it will kind of age like fine wine as time goes on, because every time we reach a milestone, we hit the 100-year milestone of this, we hit the 150-year, 200-year, okay, we'll all be long gone, but it was absolutely world changing, and people will go back and will consume that media every single time you reach those. The 80th anniversary of D-Day, I think, was last week, and
yes,
6th of June. There we go. Yeah, the TV at the moment is all the shows, all the movies, everything you've watched already. We've all seen it, but it's back out again. They've not changed it. They've not updated it. You know, you've got the same movies being played on Channel 4, same movies being played on BBC. You've got the same documentaries. You know, you've got, you know, The War in Colour, I think I saw at least twice over the last couple of weeks, like advertised as. All of that is going to be then repeated again in 10 years' time, or in 5 years' time, or in another. And it's like, we're creating content.
It won't be exactly the same. Quinn, it will not be exactly the same. They will have TJ's War as an additional film to watch.
And this is what I'm saying. Obviously, the content we're creating will age alongside it as certain files get unlocked as well, because obviously there's still a lot that are kind of hidden behind Secrets Act and things like that. You'll find that this will become more relevant.
I think that's true. There was 60 million killed. Each one of those people had a story. And then there was all the people who weren't killed.
Exactly.
Yeah. They were irreparably damaged.
Absolutely.
All right, Quinn. So what's the future for you?
I have been working on social media, people's websites, everything kind of under just the banner of, hello, my name's Quinn, for like the last, I'd say, I dread to think how many years now. What I've now started doing is I've now kind of putting an umbrella over it. I have decided that I want to take what I'm doing and kind of push it into more of a direction, and that's kind of where my company, Lemon Juice Media, has now incorporated. So I'm trying to, and I feel like I'm doing a reasonable job at the moment. I'm putting together a creative studio, which kind of my passion is I want to be able to take other people's products, their thing that they're passionate about, and I want to be able to kind of present that to people in a way that best incorporates and encapsulates what that product is. So obviously one of the kind of key things for me for why I kind of got very much into TJ's War was because I'd met Ian, who was very passionate about the book, kind of sold it to me. No, never. You're not passionate about it, not at all. But you sold it to me in a very elevator style pitch, and I can remember exactly the spot I was standing in and what I was doing at that moment. And that's the kind of thing where it's like, you elevator pitched me, you can immediately see that you are very passionate about the product, you're very passionate about the book, you're very passionate about the story, everything. And for me, that's kind of what I work towards. I don't like working with companies, people, and who aren't passionate about their product, aren't passionate about it. For me, I want to use the brand of Lemon Juice Media to create their platform, I guess. Obviously, if someone comes and they want to make a podcast, then obviously I want to make the best thing that could possibly be made to encapsulate what it is that they're doing. If someone is selling dog biscuits online, then great. Okay, well, let me make you the best website going. Let's fully get your branding out there. Let's make your passion something that you can succeed in, rather than all those people that go, I'm going to draw and paint, and think that they're never going to be able to run a business out of it. You know, they've got this passion, but you know what they now do? They now sit making coffees in Costa every day because, you know, there are these incredible artists and they're making cappuccinos all day because no one's looking at their content, no one's there helping them, they don't know where they're going, they don't know what they're doing, and there's no one there to kind of like represent them as such, no one there to basically say, listen guys, look at what these people are doing. And you know, and I want to build up a sort of studio of talented people that can essentially help me provide like a springboard for these people's businesses. I can, you know, I can do media content for them, I can do their website, I can put their best foot forward so that they're not immediately kind of firing off the back foot. They're not supposed to be able to make their product, paint, and also know how to make a website, know how to market, know how to do TikTok videos, know how to do this. They should just be expected to know their product, and then we can handle the rest.
That's fantastic, Quinn. It's
Very
like a
good.
real, my passion is your passion. Your passion is my passion. That's amazing, because obviously a lot of people, myself included, you know, I'm an actor and I do voiceovers and stuff, and I can sort of get my head around Instagram to a certain extent. But yeah, I mean, nowadays there's so much to it. It's so complicated. All the websites and this, and they keep bloody changing it.
Oh, don't I know?
There's a new thing week on week. I'm really resonating with what you're saying. It's brilliant.
It is brilliant.
I'd like
It is
to
brilliant.
be able to hire as well, and it's kind of one of the things that I think kind of comes hand in hand is I'd like to be able to hire a lot of creative people as well, and then, you know, have those people that probably wouldn't get the normal, they're in just a run-of-the-mill 9-to-5 job. I'd like to get those people and kind of drag them out of that and say, look, you're incredible at editing, you're incredible at this, let's combine that together and just create a studio that enables projects to be made, but by talented people that were never going to really have an option to do that unless they flipped a coin and just happen to meet the right person while making them a cappuccino or something.
Watch this space. The future is bright.
I've got to say that yesterday I was, as I have been, even though it's June, I have been getting the log burner up and running. And
with the weather like I can understand why.
Yeah, well, I had a piece of wood which I'd put a little fire lighter beside and set it off, but it didn't really catch. And so what I needed to do was get another piece of wood and get it right beside the first piece of wood, and then put flame to both of them, and all of a sudden the fire went off. Because one piece of wood by itself, even though you put flame to it, can easily burn out. But if it's bouncing off another piece of wood that's also got a bit of flame to it, then the two really start to explode. And I think that's what you're saying, Quinn. I think while you're by yourself, being very creative, you can maybe keep going. But if you get more people on board who are creative and enthusiastic and committed, you become much, what was the phrase you used before, David? You become much greater than the sum of your parts. So I think that what you're planning to do sounds brilliant. I think it will absolutely work. But what we're doing with this podcast, what we're doing with we're going to make a $50 million movie, that's what we're doing. We've got people together. We started with David and I, and you in the background doing the putting all this together. But the team has grown, and as it grows, more and more people are coming on board, bringing their energy, and it's becoming much bigger than I ever dreamed. And we're only 3 months in.
Absolutely, and obviously having those extra people mean that you've got the different experience. You've got the, you're not. Because I think one of the kind of key things that we were looking at originally was it was you and I, and obviously I've got my experience, you've got your experience, and there were elements and areas where we were going, okay, well, we don't actually have a shared experience of this, so let's go and research it. But those are now obviously where you get those extra people. And people, I wouldn't be able to write a script. You'd probably look at it and go, Quinn, what on earth have you written here? This is absolute drivel. But you're collecting those people in and you're building up to a point where you don't have to have one person with all the knowledge. You have the little kind of mounds of knowledge that can then come together to kind of push the effort forwards. And I think that's where I want to kind of reach with my business, and you and we are kind of working here. So
and then of course the key is to be able to trust the people that you get on board. To, as Ian said a while back, you don't get a plasterer and then tell them how to do it. Get people in and sort of let them loose, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was a famous director who said, I forget who it was, a long time ago, a famous director said, 90% of directing is casting. So if you get the right person in the first place, that's your job done, or a large part of it. Get the right person, and then off they go.
We touched on, I mentioned right back at the beginning of this that we might touch on independent bookshop owners. Go on, Quinn. You open that out for me. Why do we laugh when we talk about these
So,
people?
one of our kind of first things that we wanted to do was we were very much, the whole point of all of this is we want TJ's story out there. We want as many people to consume, and it's your mission for world peace, as you've said kind of a few times. People who read the book, read it, and then get to the end of it and think, those who obviously are a little bit more pro-war and stuff like that are now suddenly having a different perspective put on them, and people who are already anti-war are reading it going, yeah, absolutely, it's a horrible thing. Why are we doing this? Why do we keep doing this? And our main priority at the very much start of this process was we need to get this book in front of as many people as possible. We want people reading it. We want people consuming it, enjoying it, having it out there. So obviously, how do you do that? You get it in a bookshop. I contacted every bookshop in I believe, 75-mile radius of my current base of operations. Some came back saying, yeah, absolutely, come on in, come have a chat. Others, a lot of independent ones, saying they only buy books from this one supplier, and it was all the same supplier, and they will only consider a book if it's part of this supplier. And we're talking little indie bookshops, which...
That's the very definition of not independent, isn't it?
Yes. And they have independent written big across the front of the
So you've
shop.
got the coffee house bookshop. It doesn't really matter. I'm not going to name and shame, but you've got the coffee house bookshop, and then underneath it, it'll say independent bookshop circa 2020 or something like that. And you're thinking, oh yeah, perfect. They'll understand our plight. And you'll go in and you'll talk to them. Oh no, sorry, we only stock books from this supplier. And we're like, okay, well, great. So how do we get involved with that supplier? Oh no, that supplier will only come from this. And then it's this chain. And you're like, okay, so this independent bookshop is part of this enormous chain, but they think they're independent because it's just some one person running it. Whereas you've started running it and you've immediately locked yourself in with this supplier, and that supplier is a hard nut to crack.
So we're talking a KFC style operation then.
TJ's War is an independent publication.
Absolutely.
We could not get a publishing house to even read the book, never mind reject it, because everybody and their friend produced a book during the pandemic.
Oh, gosh,
all of these doors are closed completely. So we had to produce it independently, and Quinn has experienced exactly the same as I've experienced, where we go into independent bookstores and they're told we cannot stock independent books.
Yep.
Because they are locked into the distributor, and the distributor insists that all books must come through them, otherwise they break the terms of their contracts.
Yeah.
It's madness.
Well, there are countless examples, aren't there, of now extremely successful books having been turned down by many, many, many publishers.
Oh,
so
100%.
not that that's exactly the same scenario, but just the fact that you're not in this one club is not an indication of quality or eventual success.
Yes. No, I dream of being turned down by publishers. I aspire to that.
Yeah, and nowadays, obviously, we have this, the amazing resource that is the internet, and there's social media to get the word out and to be able to communicate with all sorts of people that you're not physically with. But the flip side of the same coin is that there is just so much content, so many people getting their message out, advertising their products, whatever it is, and just getting your head above that it's a long slog. And I mean, I have no doubt, at some point there will be that little breakout thing, and then there will be another thing, and it will snowball, absolutely.
Oh, 100%.
But the perseverance is a superpower, as my brother likes to say.
Yeah, and I think obviously it will. as I've said before, it's we grow as we go, and people will watch and they will see it develop as we develop. And obviously, I think one of my favorite things is to look back at some of the earlier episodes and see how, like, you guys yourselves have kind of started a bit awkwardly on the camera. You don't really know.
How dare you?
Just me. Am
I wrong?
Oh yeah, the last thing any actor wants to do, well, not any, but the last thing a lot of actors want to do is be themselves. Peter Sellers refused to go on to talk shows unless he could be a character. I mean, it is.
That's interesting.
We're getting used to it now. I am getting used to it.
He was so bad with this, Peter Sellers, that when he was doing Dr. Strangelove, where he plays this mad German scientist, his mother went to see him, and she was chauffeur driven to the Shepperton Studios, I think it was, met him for lunch. And throughout the entire lunch, he continued to be Dr. Strangelove.
With his mum.
This mad German scientist. And so when she got back into the car, the chauffeur said, "How is your son?" And she said, "I don't know. He wasn't there."
That is odd.
Just
with your own mum.
Yeah.
It's taking method acting a little bit too far.
Yeah. Maybe she was horrible, and that was his way of dealing with her. Who knows?
How dare you speak about his mother that way?
Quinn, you've been fantastic.
Yes, really interesting.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. Can we give you a bit more of a shout out?
Well, I mean, at the moment, I have my business name appear at the end of every podcast. I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok. I have a website in the kind of works at the moment, but for me, it's very much taking a backseat behind everything else. But if you're looking for guidance, content, anything like reach out, and be more than happy to kind of chat what your project is and kind of see where we go from there as I'm taking this forward each day.
Or even if you want to offer yourself to the cause.
Absolutely.
And work with Quinn.
Oh, that's 100%.
Or for Quinn's company.
So it's on record, Quinn. It's been a real pleasure having you on the journey thus far.
Thank you very much.
Long may it continue. Thank you very much for everything you do. And I say these things about David as well, of course.
Just not in his hearing.
Brilliant.
All right.
Good stuff.
That's it from me. David?
Thank you, chaps. Great chat, as usual. À la prochaine.
To find out more about the book, visit tjswar.com. And to buy it, click on the Amazon link below. To accompany us on our journey, please subscribe to this podcast because we're going to make a $50 million movie.